Hello and good evening, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tony Lynch, and this is another episode of Brief Let's Talk About It podcast. And yes, we are still moving it forward. So if you guys have been catching up, you guys know how we rock it, man. We got another amazing guest for you guys today. But before we get started, the lawyers wanted me to let you know that this is for educational purposes only. And so, if you guys are seeking help or anything like that, please seek professional help and sit back and enjoy the conversation. Please ask questions. Let us know what you think. And if you haven't already, head over to the YouTube channel, smash that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And if you like it and you think that other people can enjoy it, please by all means share this with them. Now, without further ado, my next guest, Heidi Low, she is here to tell her of her journey, her work, and yeah, man, you guys are going to be amazed. She is another amazing individual. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring on my next guest. Heidi, how you doing?
Good. Hi, Tony. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
I am too. I've been looking for it since we talked the last time. So I want you to do me a favor, introduce yourself and tell people where you're from.
I'm Heidi Low. I'm kind of from all over the west side of the U.S. Born in
Uh-huh.
Portland, raised in Seattle. Spent some time in California, and just moved from Hawaii and lived there for 10 years. And I'm back in Portland.
Now tell people about the work that you're doing. Then we'll get into the story, your journey of how you got there.
Yeah. So for the last 10 years, have I founded a nonprofit and have been running it for the last 10 years that provides retreats for bereaved parents. And I'm actually right now in the process of shifting from being the um, CEO, executive director, and leader of it to a board member and handing it off to one of our alumni, and then shifting my focus into empowering all sorts of people to be able to run retreats. Because I've seen how amazing they are through my work over the last 10 years.
See, I love that, man. I love that because when this field that we're in, right? Especially we start off one direction and then it
Mhm.
transforms and takes us in another direction, right? And we talk about bereaved parents. I think we both understand, have
Yeah.
a more in-depth understanding of what that feels like and what that means. And so let's talk about your journey. Let's talk about your story. Who was Heidi, as a child coming up, leading up to that moment?
Yeah. I was raised as an only child of divorced parents. So when I met my ex-husband at the ripe old age of, I think, 22, and he
Mhm.
had 3 kids, I thought it was a ready-made family. It was perfect. Because what 22-year-old doesn't marry into 3 children, right?
Right, right.
But for me, it seemed like, kind of, like I said, a ready-made family. After a year and a half of dating him, got married, and we did do one same thing and wait a couple of years before having our own child, because I was like, okay,
Okay.
let's figure out what it looks like to be a couple with 3 children before we add a fourth into it.
Right.
And then after a few years, we did have my one biological child, Allison, and we actually had custody of all 3 of our kids as well. So we did have a full house with 4 children. But just shy of her third birthday, my biological daughter, Allison, was diagnosed with a brain tumor.
Mhm.
And we went through treatment with her and thought things were going well. And then her first MRI after we had ended chemotherapy treatment, it turned out that the tumor was growing back. Um, so that would have been in July, and then fast forward to the next March, she actually went into a coma, had passed out at preschool, went into a coma, and then died, I would say just about 2 years after she was first diagnosed. After her 5th birthday. And so from that, my marriage fell apart, my life blew up, um, and I had already started going back to school when she was diagnosed, because I knew that I needed to do something for myself. So I was taking one class at a time, but it was like I needed something hopeful. I needed something that was forward thinking. So I would go to chemotherapy and do my homework. So when she died, I went full force into school, working full time. So really shifted from being stay at home mom and wife to single girl, working and going to school. Um, and then jump forward 8 years, and I realized the career that I built for myself, which was an amazing career, it was exactly what I thought I wanted. I had the life I thought I wanted. I'd bought a house. I had a great network of friends, and I realized I wasn't fulfilled. And so from that, um, founded the nonprofit, moved to Hawaii, and did that for 10 years. And here we are now, in the next transition. That's a Cliff Notes version. Ask away. I'm an open book.
Well, you know that you already know this is our catch up moment right now because you touched on a lot of things. Cancer. That diagnosis there. No one wants to hear that,
No.
and no one wants to hear it when it comes to our child. You're right. The
Yep.
children, things like that. Adults. It's a scary, scary thing. Scary,
Yeah.
scary. And take us back to that moment.
It was hard because I had actually it was a relief and it was hard because um, Allison had gotten pneumonia and been hospitalized for a couple of days
Mhm.
um, twice when she was 2, and then it had happened again the next spring. Um, and I kept saying, "There's something wrong. I know that there's." I mean, because mother's intuition. I just was like, "There's something underlying. What is it?" And the pediatrician kept saying, "Oh no, she just has this or this." I was like, "No, there is something." And then I noticed that she wasn't walking right anymore. And so that, like, seeing that, I looked and I was like, oh, look at her left eye is drooping. And then we looked and like her left leg was a little bit shorter. Her left arm was a little bit shorter. And so I took her back into the pediatrician and was like, okay, look at all of these things. And so she went in for a CT scan. And from there, they saw she had hydrocephalus, which is water on the brain, and that there was a ton of it. And I said, well, that's it. She has a brain tumor. And this is what's causing everything. And he's like, no, Heidi, no, don't jump to the conclusions. Let's go in for the MRI. And sure enough, she had a brain tumor that was causing all of it. So
Right.
that's why I share more of that to say that that's why it was a relief in that, oh, we finally have something that we can pinpoint, that we can say this is what it is. And it's only in the knowing what it is that you can actually address it.
Mhm.
In the unknowing is scarier in some ways, but then also knowing it's a brain tumor is really super scary. And it was a bad kind of brain tumor. And it was a big one because it was in her brain stem. So they couldn't like just take it out because
Right.
to take it out, you could kill her, because the
Oh,
brain stem is
terrifying.
where everything is. But the moment of diagnosis, I was sitting, she was getting her MRI, and I was sitting in the room with her so I could hear the whirring. Like I still can hear the whirring of the MRI machine. And I remember the rad tech had come in and done contrast. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just putting some contrast and acting like superficially upbeat. I was like, oh, red
Something's not right
flag.
here.
I was like, oh, really? Why? Oh, we just wanted to see more. And so and he bounced back out, and then he came out to go put her in recovery because she was so little, they had to knock her out to do the MRI so she wouldn't move around.
Right.
I said, if I know you can't tell me anything, but if you were me, would you be calling your spouse to come? He's like, yeah, I probably would. So right then I knew. I knew that it was something bad. And so I was sitting in recovery waiting for her to wake up. And the physician's assistant came in because we had an appointment to go straight over to the neurologist or the neurosurgeon. But the assistant came over and said, do you want to know what's going on? And I said, absolutely. He's like, you don't want to wait for anybody? I was like, nope, you tell me right now. And so he did tell me that she had a brain tumor. And that's where, again, there was a bit of relief, a bit of confirmation of like, I wasn't crazy. Like my intuition was on.
Right.
So confirmation of that felt really good. And then also like my world completely went out from under me. Like, I wish my intuition had been wrong. I wish I had been wrong. I
Right.
wish that we didn't have the relief of knowing what it was and had heard that it was nothing. um, and then there's the fear of the unknown of what's next because you hear brain tumor and you don't know, oh, is it? Because he didn't know. He's like, I think it's this size, but I'm not sure. And you're going to have to talk to the neurosurgeon. Like, I've hit my capacity for being able to give you informed information. And so it was still a big unknown of where we were. And even like she had brain surgery that night. And over the next few days, like it took a couple weeks before we really knew what we were dealing with. And so that I think was the hardest time because of that feeling of like, oh God, we know it's something horrible. We just don't know if it's good horrible or bad horrible.
Wow, man, I mean, as always, there's no words for a loss of a child. You know, they don't even have a
Yeah.
definition for us
They
out there.
don't.
And that's
No.
the crazy part. It's that horrible, right? You know,
Yeah.
the pain. They don't and I don't wish that on no one. I really don't. And in a lot of ways, I'm glad that there's people out there that do understand. You know what I'm saying, that can give
Hmm.
we can give other people encouragement, right? You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
mean, you went through the anticipatory in, into through the anticipatory grief because
Hmm.
you already, you know what's coming, right? You
Yeah.
just don't know when, but you know it's coming.
Yeah.
So you can kind of like brace yourself. And you did something. You went to school, right?
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And you engulfed in school, right? So now as the little one is going through chemo and you're going to school, how, I mean, everything is going good. I mean, you're able to focus as much as you can.
Yeah, well, and the thing is that her diagnosis, at first we thought it was gonna be really dire because of the size of the tumor once they were able to look at it and everything, but then when they got were able to do a biopsy, they actually came back, and the way that her oncologist put it was, um, "Grade school? Absolutely. High school? You bet. College? Yeah, I think so. Marriage?
Not so.
S So, with that, I was handed this platter of hope thinking that, "Okay, I hear you, and the way things are, like, I'm being realistic. We're not gonna get to the point where she's a grown adult, and a lot can happen in medical science in that time."
Right, right.
And so I felt like, yes, let's be realistic and there's a glimmer of hope, but there also is always something in me that knew from the day she was born, and it's the weirdest thing. I knew from the day she was born, she was never going to get to kindergarten. And so even as she was handing me that like kind of grade school, yeah, absolutely, I felt a sense of relief and also this sense of like, "Hmm,
Something's not right.
okay, I guess I'm going to trust you because you're the expert."
Hmm. I know how that feels.
Do you?
Yeah, I really know how that feels, right? Um, but just like we all learn, man, we learn the hard way when it comes down to things like this, and the reason why I say I understand that because we when my son was diagnosed, I mean not diagnosed, when he was overdosed, I
Mhm.
trusted his pharmacist.
Right.
We trusted the pharmacist to do her job,
Well,
which
and
was
you wanna trust the experts when they're telling you the things that you wanna hear too. So it's not only that they're the experts, but they're also saying what you want.
right. Well, yes, and I agree. Yes, and this is where I disagree with because I never wanted to put my son on medication for
Gotcha.
what he had. There's no medication for it, so they put him on a heart medication for SPID. And for
Uh-huh.
those that don't know, it's insulin processing input disorder. So I have the same thing, which is very rare that is passed down
Mhm.
from parent to child, right? You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Normally it skips generations, and another child may be born with it. It's normally misdiagnosed with ADHD, ADD, OCD, things like that,
Mhm.
right? Because these are all the way that their brain process things as we begin to develop with this, and it's not even a disorder. So, and I don't know why they call it that, because with SPID, your brain functions 1,000 times faster, if not faster, than the average person.
Mhm.
So, say for instance, I can walk down the street, I can see a car, right?
Mhm.
In my mind, I have taken this car apart to the bare minimum. Nuts, bolts, motor, tire, chassis, wheels, you name it, I've taken apart. I can also tell you the dimensions of it. And within seconds,
Wow.
I've taken it apart and put it back together as it's driving down the street.
Wow.
Lights, right? Bright lights and things like that, I
Mhm.
get very irritable.
I
Loud
bet.
noise, because my senses can't pick up on everything. And it's trying to process everything at the same time. People moving around, large crowds, things like that. I can't do it. That's why I don't go to clubs. I just don't. I love the quietness of everything because I'm able to think. When I'm out into the world, I have to look at lights because now I have to figure out how the lights work. You know what I'm saying? The
Sounds
doors and
very overwhelming.
and it can be, right, you know what I'm saying, but that's the
Mhm.
way that the when you have SBID, that's the way the mind operates, right?
Mhm.
It has to make sense out of everything, and so you grow with it and you tend to do things. If you allow yourself, the body will tell you what you need in order to slow you down enough to process everything that's going around. And
Mhm.
on top of that, you know how some people say, oh, I forgot this, that, and another. Well, imagine not forgetting anything from the time that you're a baby up until the time that you're an adult. Now, where did
Uh-huh.
it go? Imagine your brain as a library. And in this library, everything is categorized. Everything. It doesn't matter when it happened. It could have happened when you
Mhm.
was a kid. It could have happened when you was adult. But everything is categorized inside of your brain. So I can go in and pull it out. Oh yeah, I remember this, right?
Mhm.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember this math problem, right? Oh, this is how you do it. So things become kind of easy, right?
Mhm.
So my son was born with this. Now, can you imagine a 4-year-old child with a brain that operates like that, don't that, and his brain is still operating? Well, that's the reason why he got put on medication because they didn't understand the disorder. So he got put
Right.
on medication because of that. We got threatened with CPS, and that was our downfall
Gotcha.
because we trusted the pharmacists, we
Mhm.
trusted CPS that they wouldn't do that, they wouldn't hurt our son, right?
Right.
Fortunately, the pharmacist made a mistake
Mhm.
and it cost us. And we didn't get no not not even an apology.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he passed away from unknown causes, no one wanted to take responsibility for it. And these were the same people that we trusted. So that's why I said I trusted to a certain extent, but like yourself, I'm looking at the situation, I'm going, something's not right.
Right.
Something's not right. Either you need to tell me what's going on, or what I'm saying, or we need to go somewhere else because
Right.
something's not. You're not telling me everything. And then when they finally was honest, the doctor came through because we had actually switched doctors. Doctor came through and said, "I don't know what's going on with him." I said, "That's the most honest thing I've heard all night long."
Mhm.
Everyone else was giving misdiagnosis. Well, maybe it's viral, maybe it's bacterial, maybe it's this, and maybe it's that, maybe it's this, that, and another. And all of them were wrong. All of them were wrong. And at that time, his mother and I were sitting in the waiting room, and we looked at each other, and I looked at her, and I said, "They're not telling us something." And I'd be glad when they tell us what's going on because I'm ready to take my son home. And his mother looked at me and was like, I agree. And sure enough, when he passed away, it was it was so surreal because during the process, right, during this transfusion, his blood coagulated so fast that it crushed every organ in his body.
Mhm.
I've never seen anything like this before. Never. Soon as he did it, not a second. He was done. He was done. And I can only imagine as a mother, right? Your daughter, because your children, to a child, our mothers and fathers are our first love, right?
Mhm.
But now this is your biological daughter.
Mhm.
So I can only imagine the bond that you had, even with the doubt that you had going through. You know, now you're going to school, you're dealing with these doctors. There's that distrust, disbelief, and things like that. What are the next steps behind it?
Well, so I didn't have distrust or disbelief in the doctors. It was more just that inner knowing um, that her story wasn't going to be what they thought medically. Um,
Yes.
and going through school, it was good, and I was doing, like I said, doing one class at a time, and, so that all was really good. The hard part was I was did this internship. I was offered an amazing internship that was an opportunity, like a once in a lifetime opportunity that most people didn't get, and so I did it, and it was like for 3 months, and unfortunately, she started getting sick in, like, the last couple weeks of that, and so, like,
Right.
I had taken some time off, and there was, like, that balance of, like, "Okay, I have to step away. I'm still in the internship, I have to step away from the work,
Mhm.
but my daughter is the most important, I'm gonna be with her," and it was her first day back to school that she, passed out. Her trach got plugged at preschool, and so there was a
Mm.
lot of guilt, and of course, I didn't end the at that point, my internship was done. Like, she died or she went into a coma, I was like, "I'm not gonna go back." Um, so there was a lot of, um I don't know if there was some guilt, but a lot of, like, why did I spend that like, I didn't know what I didn't know, but, like, why did I spend that last what ended up being her last 3 months alive or awake in an internship? Um Because obviously I was home in the evenings and stuff, but, like, that was precious time that I could have spent with her, and yet
Right.
you don't know what you don't know,
Yeah.
and I had been with her the rest of the time, like, that's the only 3 months that I wasn't, um, I don't know if that even answered your question, but
No, it did. It did, and I'm glad that you answered it that way because it puts a lot of things in a perspective, right? Because, like you said something really important. You don't know what you don't know,
yeah,
right? So you're under the impression that maybe you know what I'm saying. Hey,
mhm,
she's gonna be fine for
mhm,
now and
yeah.
come back. I think that's what we all because that's what we tell ourselves, right?
Yeah, well, and you can't this is one thing that at some points I beat myself up over, and in others, I feel like is a real gift that I gave both Allison and then also my living children who are now adults, is that,
Hmm.
like, you can't even if your child is given a very dire diagnosis, you can't stop living and you can't stop life.
Right.
And that was something for me, it was like how I was doing it very consciously. It was, how do I balance honoring this experience that she's going through and
Mm.
taking it
Yes. Yeah.
seriously and doing all that I can for her to live a full life, but also honor living that full life. And not just for her, but for our whole family unit because my husband at the time, and my 3 children were also all living in this. And so
Right.
we couldn't totally dedicate everything to that and not experience the entirety of it. And so that's where, yes, had I known that she was going to go into a coma that week, of course I wouldn't have done the internship. But not having known that, I was trying to balance and weigh both of those things at the same time.
Understand. Definitely understand. Um, Now I have to ask, and how did this affect the children? And we'll talk about the relationship leading up,
Uh-huh.
to that. And how did that affect the children and your relationship with them as they were going through this process as well?
It's been really interesting because they're now the youngest one's now 30. And
Mhm.
so I actually a couple of years ago did interviews with them to ask them, like, for other people, and they're on YouTube, to ask, like, okay, how could I have done that differently? So for other parents that are going through this now, both with a sibling that's gone through treatment and through the death, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? You're not going to hurt my feelings. So I actually have the benefit of having heard from them, which I love. And I love how open and candid they were. Um, they were affected, and they were profoundly affected, especially, my daughter, my stepdaughter, bonus daughter, because I love and adore them, because she shared a room with Allison, they were the closest in age, and they were buds.
Yeah.
So it affected her the most, but it affected all of them, and what's interesting that is that it affected them at the time, and the death and, like, the blow up of our family affected them most profoundly in the moments. It's now as adults and as they're all now becoming parents that they can see how much it affected them, um, like, going through her treatment and all of that. At the time, I actually feel like we did a pretty darn good job in talking about that balancing of life, because
Mhm.
even in talking to them later, I was always worried that they were gonna feel like they were short shafted or the jealous. And none of them, even in hindsight, did. They're all like, "Oh, we just wanted Allison to get better and we loved her and we felt loved." Um, and I think that's because we kept life as normal as we could. And
Okay.
so they were absolutely affected profoundly, but not in the ways that I thought they would be. So, um,
Yeah.
I think that for them, it was more of like in their adult years, looking back, going, "Oh, counseling would have been good." Having people that weren't impacted by what Allison was going through be in our lives, and more people like that would have been good
Mhm.
to have their own like safe space.
Okay. Well, and that makes total sense. I always ask because um, I've had the opportunity to talk to my son's sibling after some
Hmm.
years, and we talked at length. I mean,
Hmm.
probably 4, maybe 5 hours at length
Hmm.
about what was going on. And so, and the reason why I wanted to, because I wanted to get a perspective.
Yeah.
I wanted to understand, like, how did it affect you? This is
Yeah.
this is your younger brother, and they were like two peas in a pod, and that
Hmm.
was one of the reasons because I hadn't talked to him in a few years, probably since my son passed away. I hadn't talked to him, and
Hmm.
he is transgender,
Hmm.
so I wanted to understand what was going on,
Hmm.
and when he told me, I was floored because I was like, "Why didn't you reach out to me?" And he went, because I didn't know how you were dealing with it, and I didn't want to bring up something to trigger what you was going through. I said, "Yeah, but you just lost your younger brother, and here you are. You've attempted to take your life 5 different times, and you've been in 6 different mental health institutions." You know?
Well, and I think that that's why they all said, and I think that it's really self-aware of them to be
Mhm.
reflect back and say, I wish I had had somebody that wasn't impacted, because as much as, like, yeah, I wish you could have come to me, although, like, with our whole family dynamic, it wasn't really a possibility, but, like, I know that their grandparents wish that they had been able to go to them and all that. It's like, but even as kids, kids are intuitive and kids know, and kids don't wanna be a further burden on all the people that they dearly love and know are so profoundly burdened. So I think that's the biggest gift for anybody that's listening and maybe going through something like that. The biggest gift you can give your kids is somebody that's not being touched by it to talk to you, because then they feel like they can put down the heavy burden. They don't feel like, no matter how fantastic of a parent you are or a grandparent, your kids aren't going to want to give you a heavier burden.
Right.
So give them a place where they can lay it down, where it feels safe to lay it down.
And see, and that makes total sense, right? That definitely makes total sense. But also, um, having, like you said, having someone there that's looking at it from a different perspective, that's that's going to be there not to judge,
Mhm.
because what I found, and I found this out the hard way, when you have individuals that have been impacted by the same thing, there comes a sense of comparison, right? And what I mean by that, so say for instance, um, you tend to want your relationship with that person to be a lot more than what it is with the next individual, right?
Mhm.
Well, I did this with him, and this another, and not understanding that, what I'm saying, you all had a different relationship with this individual. You just receive it from the perspective of your relationship, not saying that one relationship was better than the next,
Yeah,
but
you
then it
have,
becomes pairing.
and you all have different relationships, and you also all have different ways of grieving. And
Right.
none of it's good or bad. It all just is.
Right. And that's what I mean. It becomes a sense of competing against one another, who had the
Mhm.
better memories, right? You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And having someone there. And I think that's the reason why we do that. I love doing this work now because I'm the guy that sits there, but no attachment to it, and I'm able to see it from a perspective of deep understanding from my perspective, but in an adaptive way to where I can go, you know what, try doing this, or try
Mhm.
these things for here, and I can hand them a list of tools and resources and say, you don't have to use all of them, but
Right.
when you need to, use the ones that benefit you in the situation that you're in at that moment. And
Yeah.
if you're having a little bit of trouble or a lot more trouble, then pick up the phone. You can call this number, you can call this number, or you can call me.
Hmm.
Right. But either way, either which way it goes, right? I'm being that guy is a true privilege and honor because I have no attachment to it,
Right.
you know,
Exactly.
and I can
Yeah.
be effective in that work. Now, moving forward,
Hmm.
you got divorced.
Yeah.
Oh, see, that's sad
Yeah.
because it just seems like whenever whenever parents go through something like this, child loss is something, a lot of child loss. They always get divorced.
Well, and
Yeah.
actually, I would that statistics. You can read different articles will say different things about the
Hmm.
statistics of divorce after child loss. What I can say is, after working with parents for 10 years and primarily couples, we've only done two retreats that were with moms, just moms.
Okay.
Um, Now, obviously, they're self-selecting to come to a retreat, so that might, be skewing it. So, like, I'm well aware of that. But when I look at our statistics of parents that have come, we've only had two parents over the 10 years that have gotten divorced post retreat.
Oh, okay,
So,
okay.
and a lot of them, like, I think here's my thought, and it's not based on any kind of research, it's just my observations. I feel like losing a child is such a stressor that what it does is it amplifies the fault lines and the stress lines that are already in it, and you either are able to come together and build up from those, or it just totally separates them. So it turns a spotlight on what was already there in the relationship and puts it in a
Okay,
pressure cooker.
okay. Well, and see that makes sense. And just as you deal with women, I deal with a lot of men. And
Uh-huh.
so it's a totally different perspective when it comes down to it. Not saying that it's
Uh-huh.
always the same, right? Because I
Right.
do have a friend, a really good friend, my brother from another mother, Dave Roberts. I don't know if you've ever met him, but amazing dude. He lost his daughter, she transitioned. Um, and him and his wife grieved and went through this process and they still together.
Mhm.
And one of the things that he told me that helped was that when it came down to them needing space from
Mhm.
each other, they knew how to walk away from the situation and go, Dave needs to go here and go into his grief. The wife needs to go here and maybe just sit for a minute and
Right.
sit with her grief. And then afterwards, after they were able to sit within it, they were able to slowly come back together and talk about what was going on. So I love that, right? Go ahead, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, and I think that that's the thing, though, is that couples that have a decent foundation, like, no matter what, different individuals are gonna grieve different ways. If couples have a decent foundation, they're gonna be totally lost in their grief and their grief in different ways, but they're gonna
Yes.
find ways to reconnect and to respect each other's differences and different
Right.
ways of grieving. And, like, even, like, the parents that came to our retreats, they may have been on completely different islands in their grief, but they respected each other enough to say, "Oh, well, this one needs this," or, "Oh, I think this one could benefit from this, so let's get here together so that we can
Mhm.
understand our different ways of focusing." And then I think that when a marriage is in a place that it really shouldn't have been anyway, those differences, it's like, well, I don't have the capacity to deal with my own grief. I certainly don't have the capacity to care for this yahoos grief, and I don't want to.
Right. No, hey, and we talk about, as a matter of fact, we talk about that a lot, right? And a reason why we talk about it because I love this statement, and it's been a very very true statement. Grief is selfish,
Yeah.
right? Your grief is your grief, and it's so selfish because for one, your grief is going to demand your attention. It's going to demand you pay sit with it. It's so demanding. It's so needy.
And it has to be. There's no way to go through it
Right,
except for to be selfish, because it's
right.
also a very lonely place. Nobody can carry your grief for you. You have got to go through the work of grieving on
Hmm.
your own, as much as you would love to offload it.
Yeah, and I think that's where okay, so I think that's where a lot of people get stuck because they want to offload it, right? But
Mhm.
that grief is not to be offloaded; it's to be dealt with. It's to be
Yep.
set with. It's to be given permission to take you through a process of learning, feeling, and growing, right? And adapting to the new reality that you're now in,
Yep.
right? Because that's exactly what it is. It's a brand new reality that you're in, and so now you have to adjust to your new world, your new surroundings, the new people, and things like that. Because as we both know, not everybody's going to be there.
Right.
There's going to be people that walk away. So, and then there may be new people that come in, right, into this new
Yeah.
world that you're in that understand what you're going through. But it's dude, that grief, man, that grief is honest, and
Yeah.
selfish as it is, it's honest because if you allow yourself to go through it, if you allow yourself to sit with it and learn from it, you go through the healing process. And the healing process, I think the healing process is more hurtful than the actual grief itself.
Yeah, I think that yes. I think that the avoidance of the grieving process is the most hurtful.
Yes, well, yes, I agree with that as well. And I love to put all of that together, right?
Uh-huh.
The avoidance is hurtful because when you avoid it, you lose a lot more than what you think, right?
Well,
But
and
it
it
doesn't
takes
go
so much
anywhere.
well, and it takes so much more energy to find all the detours than to just
Mhm.
go through the damn path
Yeah,
at the end of
yes,
the day.
yeah, and I think that's the part about it, right? For individuals like us, and not everybody chose this path,
Right.
right? A lot of people, as you say, everybody's individual. They're going to go through their own grieving process. So when we speak, we speak from a place of where we went what felt right for us, which
Right.
was going with the grief, going through the waves of it, and learning
Yep.
and being able to process it, put it back out there, and go, I'm going to help this demographic of people. Well, there's people out there that's not meant to do the work that we do.
Oh, for
um
sure.
and so and that's what I was talking about. They get wrapped up into it because for one, they don't know that they made it. Like myself, I never understood what it was.
Mhm.
um I've never been taught what it was. I didn't understand the different aspects of it, the different variations of it. And Lord knows, I didn't know what I was doing, right? I was just kind of winging it, right?
Right.
Like, what is this?
Well,
And then
I don't think anybody knows what they're doing when they're going through grief, especially when you're talking about losing a child, because there is no guidebook or handbook.
no, no, there's no guidebook to it. But that's what I mean. Like we didn't, and when I say that, I'm saying I can
Mhm.
only speak from my perspective, right? I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew that I couldn't run from it. I was too tired to run, you
Yeah.
know, and I was too tired to keep fighting. I think I fought it for so long. I'm a man up. You know what I'm saying? This is not
Mhm.
going to beat me. You know what I'm saying? I was so determined not to let this life whoop me like this that it whooped me like that, right?
Right.
And then it was the submission coming to it when I realized that I couldn't fight anymore. I
Right.
submitted to it, and that's when I began to allow myself to receive what the grief was giving me,
Yeah.
and, and things like that. And then when did you decide, during school or after school, that you were going to dedicate your experience to helping bereaved parents?
It wasn't until 8 years later. So I graduated and got a great job and then moved into an even better job. So I was Yeah, it was 8 or 9 years after Allison had died, that I realized, and it was kind of like a an epiphany, divine moment, download kind of moment of I'm living exactly what I thought I wanted, but I'm not satisfied. What is it that I picture myself doing? And gave myself an exercise of like, okay, if I had it on my way, what would I actually be doing?
Right.
And then realize, oh, this is what I would be doing. And so I pulled together all of, I'm very much an internal processor, not a support group kind of person. And so I did it, and I didn't do a lot of stuff focused on grief. It was more looking at like, how can I take this and it be a catalyst for change? How
Uh-huh.
can I use it to be in a place that I'm even happier in the future?
Mhm.
Um, and so I took all those things and said, okay, I want to put that together for other parents. And it's not going to be for everybody because everybody's different. But for the
Right.
people that are like me and that this does resonate, how can I provide that for them? And so that that's kind of how I came to be. And again, it was like 8 or 9 years. It was 8 or 9 years when I had the idea, and then it was 10, 10 years or 11 years after she died that we had our first retreat.
Okay. Now, because I love the creative side of this. You went through this process, and now you're doing, you're helping bereaved parents, which is an underserved demographic, and far
Mhm.
as what I understand, or as far as I'm concerned, we people don't really understand, don't really want them to understand, but it does happen. Right?
Yeah.
There's a reality, and then there's the reality that we want. Unfortunately, they don't work hand in hand.
Yeah.
you know. So now you've done your first retreat. How was that? What made you want to do the retreat? I think because it's fascinating because I've done six in my life,
Uh-huh.
done two conferences, right?
Uh-huh.
And I could tell you when I did my first conference, I didn't know what I was doing, right? You know what I'm saying? I
Uh-huh.
just knew I was going to do it, right? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? The second one, I had it down packed. I was like, this is what I'm
Right.
going to do, and I followed that path. When I did my first retreat, I was all over the place. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. Do this. I didn't have no simple direction. I just knew I was going to do it, right? But I
So
enjoyed it. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, so I realized what like that, okay, this is I want to take all the resources and tools. So that piece was known, was like, okay, I know this body of work, but then how to organize it. And this is the way that I process things in general. I did a lot of thinking of like, okay, it's all this. And then I released it and let it go and was like, okay, now universe, creativity, I kind of call it my flow. You're going to show it to me.
Mhm.
And just created space and time for that. And then sat down one day, went to my favorite beach because by this time I was living on Kauai and sat on the beach and was like, okay, what does this look like? And built it out from that space of like, okay, we're going to honor the past, live in the moment, embrace the future. We're going to
Mm.
separate
Yeah.
out the overarching that way, and then each day take one of the exercises that I know works and plug it. Where does it make sense, and emphasize that piece of it, and
Mhm.
built out the whole curriculum. And then because my degree is in political science, not psychology. I took it to psychologists and social workers and said, here, look at this. Am I going to break anybody if I do it this way?
Right, right.
And they're like, no, absolutely not. In fact, you very intuitively built something that very much works and is in alignment. And then since then, over the last 10 years, I've done a lot of reading and research, like with internal family systems and, somatic stuff and traumatic, post traumatic stuff. And it's like, oh, look at that. I pulled that from that and that from that. And it was all just an intuitive thing. And I don't think that everybody is like that. I think that I thought that everybody was like that. I've come to realize that's a gift of mine, but that's
Yeah,
also
yeah,
where I am now of like, okay, but for other people that have that gift, I want to hand you the tools and empower you to be able to do the same thing because it is possible. Like we do
yeah.
intuitively know how to heal ourselves or find the resources to heal ourselves. And so if you can go do that for other people that are going to resonate with your special sauce, I want to help you.
I love that you said that because again, I thought I was the only one. I thought I honestly thought I was the only one, right? Because how I got to where I was listening and going, whoa, this is what this is, right?
Mhm.
Without understanding,
Right.
building things without understanding that I just knew I was going to do it. I just knew that, hey, this is what it looks like. And this is the way that this is the path that I'm going to follow.
Mhm.
So it's like you have that lane that you're in. And I realized that there was nobody else there in my lane to teach me or say, hey, do it this way, hey, do it that way. And in my own lane, I am the creator of what I want it to look like, right?
Right.
It comes from being
Absolutely.
very artistic as well, right? Very,
Mhm.
very creative. So we may not express ourselves through paints or drawings and things like that, but we can look at something and go, I wonder. I
Mhm.
wonder what that looks like in real life. And then once we start to do it, the creative flows start to come. What programs, things like that, right?
Yep.
I was practicing mindfulness before I even knew what mindfulness was.
Right. And it's what's cool is that it's so affirming that, like, then you go read something and see the research and you're like, "Oh, yeah, of course.
Right. It makes sense.
That's why."
It makes sense. And you just sit back going like this. But that's what that is.
Yeah.
Okay. Because intuitively we know exactly what needs to happen with ourselves. And when we listen to surrender to what's going on in our bodies, on that what our bodies and our minds are trying to tell us. But we have to distinguish between the two voices, the one that's telling us, hey, what I'm saying, you're going crazy. This is not gonna, this
Uh-huh.
is, that part. And then there's the part of going, yeah, let's do it. Why not? Right.
Well, and I think that it's a you touched on a good point of like, okay, is it my fear and my patterning talking, or is it my intuition and my gut and my genius that are talking? And I think that the more that you tune in and you listen, and the more you start to trust yourself, you can discern the difference.
Right.
And you can even feel when you're rebelling against knowing the difference.
Oh, so
If
you
that
speaking
makes
from
sense.
experience. Uh-huh. I saw what you did there. I thought I was the only one that did that.
Yeah. Um,
I rebelled
and
against it and got my butt whooped.
yeah. And so, and again, it circles back to, I think that all of us, I truly believe every single human being has built into them the ability to intuitively heal themselves and find the resources and draw in the right things to heal themselves. And I think that we also go through a lot of life experiences where we may not be open to it, we may not trust ourselves enough for it, and all of those things. And where for those of us that are blessed and lucky enough to be in a space where we start to trust ourselves and have the courage to start making those steps, that's where I want to give them all the opportunities in the world and all the empowerment to go fight, win, and continue on that path so that you can deliver it to other people so that other people feel more empowered to then listen to themselves.
So I love that. So what's next for Heidi?
So I am now actually I have an intensive day coming up in January, but in general, what I'm doing is, like I said, taking all the people that are like us that have either professional credentials or that don't, that know that they have goodness to give. I mean, there's a ton of life coaches and healers out there that like, oh my gosh, I have this amazing stuff that I give to people and
Mhm.
deliver, and I'm doing it once a week or once a month through this or that program, and seeing how powerful retreats are. Like, well, let me show you how you can do this in this condensed amount of time where people are in a space where they're dedicating their time to this. They're with like minded folks so that you can pack a more powerful and long lasting transformation in less time. And so giving them the tools to do that.
Love that. Now, as we begin to wrap it up, I always ask my guests, if you could leave the audience with something, what would you give them?
That whatever dreams and desires are buried within you, those are yours and they are yours to live. And please feel empowered to go after them, because they would not be inside you if they weren't meant to be expressed.
Mhm.
And no, everybody doesn't think the same thing and feel the same thing and want the same thing and have the same gifts. You are special and unique in those, and you should be doing them.
I love that. Now, last thing, how can people find you and find more information about about your retreats and how to get involved in this?
Yeah. So I'm really easy to find. My website is HeidiLow.com. So HEIDILOW.com. And on there, I have like a free guide for like, if you want to envision your ideal retreat. So that's a way that you get in touch with me really easily. I'm
Mhm.
also on Instagram at Heidi Christina Lau. So Christine is with CH. Um, and so I think those are both like really easy ways to find me. And then if you're interested in the nonprofit, if you're a bereaved parent and interested in applying for that, it is ohanaoasis.org. So OHANAOASIS.org.
Nice, nice. And I do believe I have that information out there. I need to check to see if I put it down in the descriptions. If not, I'll message you, get it on in there so people can find
Perfect.
you. Because
Perfect.
I love the work that you do. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for the retreats and being open to helping others understand how to do these things as well. I think there needs to be 100 different Heidis out there. I do, just all over the place. Hey, this is what we're going to do. Come and learn from me. I'm going to show you what's going on, because the work that you do is so beneficial, right? You know what I'm saying? And it comes from a place of understanding, deep understanding, empathy, and compassion. And I think in a world that we live in nowadays, we need a lot more of that,
Well,
right?
thank
We
you.
need a lot more people loving on each other and picking and lifting each other up and speaking love and life into each other, right? And
Yep.
so, and support our healing.
Yeah.
How important is that, right? So thank you. Thank you for doing the work that you do. Heidi, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. And I look forward to having more conversations with you, in the future.
Yeah.
And things. We got new episodes or new series coming up. Don't ask me why. The creative mind is always thinking, right? You know what I'm saying? I think I got talked into this one, but I'm not.
Uh-huh.
I'm not really sure what happened. But we'll talk about it, right?
Mhm.
So thank you again. For those who have tuned in today, or will be tuning in later, thank you guys for tuning in. Do me a favor. If you haven't already, you made it all the way to the end, smash that subscribe button, hit that bell notification, leave a comment, and share with somebody that you think will benefit from these conversations. And again, until next time, you guys keep your head up. We love you and thank you for your support. And check out Heidi. Check out her. Check out the links in her description. And if you guys are interested, go check her out. Okay.
And
Until
thank
next time.
And I want to say thank you, Tony, for all that you do and what you're providing for people out there. It's a great resource and great piece of love and gift that you're offering.
I definitely appreciate that. I humbly accept it with gratitude. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Right.
And yeah, you guys, we'll see you. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Hold tight, Heidi.